The stream is live.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the Williamsport City Council meeting of Thursday, April 30th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. We're meeting remotely through a Zoom application. We'll move to the first item in the agenda tonight. First item is the approval of City Council minutes dated 4/16/20. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or corrections, additions from council? Hearing and seeing none. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 2, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests tonight. I want to make an announcement before we go to the next item. We had a council executive session Monday, April 27th, concerning negotiations and personnel. And we will have an executive session after tonight's meeting concerning public safety and personnel issues. Having gotten that out of the way, we'll move on to item 3. Proclamation Bells Across Pennsylvania Day. Could you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
Well, there's really not a short form, it's a proclamation.
Okay. There's no, all right. Well then, Mayor Slaughter, we'll go to you.
Yeah, but this is the PA State Mayor's. I received it. Basically what it is, the mayors from across the Commonwealth are just asked all of us in councils to declare this Sunday, 7 o'clock, bells across PA, and it'll be for 3 minutes to honor all those on the front lines battling the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, you know, obviously we want to show our support in this effort and show our appreciation to all those battling on the front lines.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose we should vote on this, correct, Mr. White?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion from
Move.
council in a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any comments or questions from council?
Just a quick point of clarification. So why do we need to vote on this?
It is, if you look at the bottom.
Austin, we can't hear you.
If you look at, can you hear me?
No.
If you look at the bottom of the proclamation, it says that now therefore the mayor in concert with the council of city of Williamsport hereby proclaims. So since it is actually city council proclaiming something, it's something that should have a motion and a vote on it.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think we're ready for the vote, Mrs. Frank, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move on to,
Can I ask the solicitor if I need to give it a resolution number or anything?
Certainly. Mr. White?
Ms. Frank, I don't think that's necessary. I think as it's a proclamation, we typically wouldn't have a resolution for that, but if you need to assign a resolution number for it for purposes of tracking it, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to item 4 then, resolution to further extend the proclamation of the mayor. Would you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
Resolution to further extend the proclamation of the mayor from March 13th, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion and a second from council?
So move.
Second. Second.
Motion and a second. Yes, we did. Although this was a proclamation, because Mrs. Frank did need to track it, we put it a resolution number to it because we knew we'd be amending it. It reads the same as it has about the mayor proclaiming in light of the pandemic that there were restrictions to apply to all property within city limits at all hours. So previously we amended it to go from 250 to a limit of 50. And at that point we extended it to April 2nd. April 2nd, we extended it to April 30th and reduced the gathering number to 10 from 50. So tonight we have the same proclamation in the same resolution, but the blanks are there again for us to decide how far out to extend it and what the numbers shall be. So I'll open it to discussion tonight. Mr. Yoder?
Thank you, President Allison. So just trying to follow what's happened the past couple of weeks. I personally would suggest we extend it for 2 weeks, leave it at 10. If you look at the different levels that the governor, excuse me, has put out, even if we would go to the yellow phase in the next 2 weeks, social gatherings specifically are still limited and what have you. So I think over the next 2 weeks, we would be well in line by just extending it for 2 weeks and keeping it as it is.
Thanks, Mr. Yoder. Others?
Mr. Allison, if I might,
Certainly.
we did have a little bit of a limited discussion on this at finance, and it seemed as though at the finance committee meeting on Tuesday, and it seemed as though the general consensus was that we should hold the line for 2 weeks to get ourselves to the next regularly scheduled council meeting. So 10 individuals, extend the proclamation to May 14th. And then if for some reason the governor makes a rapid turnaround on the level of the restrictions, we can always schedule a special meeting specifically to roll back our numbers as well. This isn't a concerted effort to keep Williamsport under tighter restrictions than what's being recommended by state government. It's just trying to keep ourselves in line. So the easiest thing to do, I think, from my perspective, would be to extend the existing restrictions through May 14th. If we need to, we can revisit it in the interim. The one other note I would make is that the wording on this particular resolution was driving me a little bit nuts because it's gotten pretty unclear as we've added to it over the course of the last several weeks. So if I might, I would ask to be able to amend the specific wording with wording that I'm happy to send directly to Ms. Frank as well as read out into the record. Just to clarify a little bit what the activity has been over the last month and change, what steps we've taken to extend the proclamation and at what times. But that's just every once in a while I can be a bit of a bugaboo for grammar and clarity. And since this will be a bit of a historical anomaly, hopefully, I would,
Second that.
I would like the historical record to be as accurate as possible. And,
So do you want us to, you want to share that with us? And
I would, yeah, sure. I would make a motion to amend the language in the resolution, starting at the second whereas,
Mhm.
to, whereas the City Council of the City of Williamsport on March 17th, 2020 declared the mayor's proclamation effective through April 2nd, 2020, and further limited the number of individuals at gatherings, events, or conferences from 250 to 50 individuals. Whereas the City Council of the City of Williamsport on April 2nd, 2020 further extended the mayor's proclamation through April 30th, 2020, and further limited the number of individuals at gatherings, events, or conferences from 50 to 10 individuals. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the City Council of the City of Williamsport hereby extends the mayor's proclamation through May 14th, 2020, and maintains the limit on the number of individuals at gatherings, events, or conferences to 10 individuals. It doesn't change the substance of anything. It just clarifies it and provides the dates on which all of those things happened. And that was my only interest, was in completely clarifying the historical record here.
That sounds great,
Okay.
Councilman Neely. Did you want to make a motion on that we
Yeah,
amend?
I would make a motion to amend the text of the resolution, beginning at the second whereas, to incorporate that language. And as I said, I have it written down here. I can send it to Janice.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion from other council members on the motion to amend? Everyone's in agreement?
All right.
Okay, we'll have the vote, please, on the motion to amend the wording in the proclamation, in the resolution, rather.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Excuse me, Janice. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Mr. Allen,
Yes. The amendment to the wording passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. And we'll get back to the resolution proclamation itself. Were there other comments or questions on it? Hearing none, we'll vote on the original motion, please, Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes 7-0. We'll now move to item 5, resolution authorizing renewal and extension of Liflin's skate park lease. Could you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
a resolution authorizing the renewal and extension of the Liflin Skate Park lease between the City of Williamsport and Liflin Skate Park, Inc.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
so moved,
Motion in second. Thank you. Mayor Slaughter.
Yes, good evening again. What you have before you is resolution to extend the lease agreement between Liflin Skate Park and the city. The only difference is we've been doing it each year, renewing it each year. They asked if we would consider doing a 5-year extension, so it doesn't have to come each year for renewal. So that's one of the changes. The other we added in there is that since we want to do a 5-year, it'd be subject to an inspection by our codes department and our streets and parks personnel. So pending it passes inspection, it would just renew and for a 5-year extension. And they don't plan on any major structural changes or any of that nature at this time. And it was reviewed by finance.
Thank you, Ms. Slaughter. Ms. Mealy, reviewed by finance?
Yes, this was reviewed by finance and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. I think most of our observations related to the fact that this organization has been operating with transparency and responsibility at the skate park for a number of years now, and it's probably about time that we extend the length of their lease so that they don't need to come back to us every year or every 2 years to get the lease extended. We have, the mayor did of course build enough covenants into the lease that if there were any major issues at the park, we would have plenty of room to force them to come back to us for to both make renovations or make fixes at the park, and then also to come back to us to further examine the lease if we have problems. I think the only other item we had a discussion about related to the insurance, which, as you'll note through the lease, is paid for by the city with a cap of $3,000, and if it exceeds $3,000, then the skate park makes up the remainder. I believe Mayor Slaughter said that the insurance right now is hovering something slightly below $2,000 a year. So clearly we're still pretty well within what would be expected to add this to our blanket insurance coverage for all of our parks and rec activities. And I believe that was it. It was forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Comments from council tonight? It has been a great addition to our recreation component. And it's been well received, well used, and hasn't caused us any problems. I know that was a concern in the very beginning, if this was going to work, and it's worked out famously, I'd say, and really filled a need in the community. So I think we're all happy we can get behind this and see that it has a good future ahead of it. Having said that, Mrs. Frank, would you call the vote, please?
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We'll move to item 6, resolution authorizing the Williamsport Bureau of Police to hire one officer. Would you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
Resolution authorizing the Williamsport Bureau of Police to hire one police officer, Brett Garbrick.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion from council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you. And Chief Hagan, welcome.
Good evening, President Allison, members of council. This is a resolution to hire one officer, Brett Garbrick, who is currently serving the Old Lycoming Police Department as a police officer right now. He is number 8 on our civil service list. I would like to bring to your attention a typo in the resolution in paragraph 2. The last line should say June 8th, 2020, and for some reason, there's a typo there. On the attachments, I do include the date in the letter to City Council. It does mention June 8th there. He is a very qualified applicant, a graduate, a 2014 graduate of the South Williamsport High School. He graduated from Messiah College with a bachelor's degree in psychology. He's a recent graduate of the Mansfield Police Academy. And as I said, he was recently hired by the Old Lycoming Police Department. A fantastic candidate, is very excited about the opportunity to come work at the city. And so we recommend him for hire just as soon as we possibly can. Thank you. Also was forwarded to the full body of council with no recommendation. The Finance Committee had concerns given the coronavirus and the current situation. So it was forwarded with no recommendation.
Thank you, Chief Hagan. Ms. Mealy, Finance?
Yes, this does come to the full body of council with no recommendation from the Finance Committee. I'll try to leave space for Mr. Yoder and Ms. Katz to explain their thoughts on this as well. Basically, the feeling of the Finance Committee was that the city has not yet sort of adequately explored and perhaps understood what the potential impact of the coronavirus crisis will be on the city budget both this year and next year. And I think we in some extensive discussion with Chief Hagan and Mr. Pavlak from the Finance Department, you know, we discussed that there is a retirement coming up at the beginning of the year for the police. There is an officer who's going to be deployed shortly. We've made one hire so far this year who will have to go to the police academy before he can begin service with the police department, and then will be 6 months in training before he can begin his service as well. You know, the chief and Joe Pavlak from Finance both seem to agree that it would be probably wise on the part of the city to hire above the 47 officers that we were budgeted at for 2019. For 2020, we did budget 49 officers. And I think the question from the Finance Committee is primarily, is there wisdom in going over our 2019 complement when we don't know what's going to happen budgetarily, and we don't want to wind up in a situation where we have to have layoffs in the department or something. So the recommendation from the Finance Committee was actually a recommendation. We had a discussion about financials and understanding sort of movement of officers in the department. And we asked Mr. Pavlak and Chief Hagan to put together a slightly more comprehensive summary of what was expected to happen in the police department, understanding that one of the key issues with the coronavirus is that nothing that is expected is happening. But all of that said, we asked them to put together a slightly better summary of some expectations for the department moving through the next 6 to 18 months, say. They said they would have those for us in 2 weeks' time, and we recommended that the full body of council table this item for 2 weeks. That pushes us back to May 14th, but still gives us 3 weeks on the hire date for Mr. Garbrick. So it gives us a little more time to delve into this and understand the financial picture within the department and without, but doesn't in fact delay the hire date that was proposed in the original proposal. And I will yield to Mr. Yoder and Mrs. Katz to go into that further if you'd like. Yeah, please.
Mr. Yoder.
No, I think Councilwoman Mealy summed it up pretty good. The only thing that I would add is I think the Finance Committee fully acknowledged and fully understands the staffing levels, the staffing concerns. And I don't think that it's an isolated problem. I think that we all can acknowledge that it's not just the police department, it's probably across all of City Hall. And I think the ask to more so Joe Pavlak specifically, not just Chief Hagan, was not to really just look at a financial picture from just the police department side, but as much as we can citywide, because the revenue impact that we might see is going to impact us citywide. So I think we need to look citywide as much as we can over the next couple of weeks to understand some strategies to combat it if the worst case happens. So aside from that, Councilwoman Mealy summed it up pretty well, and I would fully support tabling this to buy ourselves a couple additional weeks to investigate this further.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Mrs. Katz.
Yes, I agree with Ms. Mealy and Mr. Yoder. We have no qualms whatsoever of hiring this officer. We just want to make sure that our ducks are in order financially. It's really kind of frightening what's happening throughout the country. Forget about what's happening in our city. And I know we talked to Joe Pavlak and the chief, and we do know that financially we're covered for this officer. But we just wanted to make sure all of the financials are in order. And I think the chief has done, is doing his homework. He always does his homework. And there were things that happened, and it was a good, honest discussion that we had. We did not know that we were going to have a retiree coming up in January. Did not know that we had 2 officers on family leave. And this impacts the whole department when there are people that are retiring and people that are not there. We also have 1 officer who can't even start the academy yet because of the virus. So, we are short, and we do understand this. And I think, being on the finance committee, we do have to be careful where the numbers are. And I think we all understand that it's a catch-22. Everybody wants the safety of the city, but we also have to be careful where the taxpayers, what they're going to be responsible for. So, the safety is going to come first. We'll see where we go. And in 2 weeks, this is not going to hinder the hire of this officer on June 8th at all. And then we'll get to meet the officer before he does start. So I think that's all I have to say. I think we've covered all the bases at this point.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Other comments from council? Mr. Pelisi.
I would just like to say that I completely agree with Councilwoman Mealy, Councilwoman Katz, and Councilman Yoder on this one. And just to, again, mirror what Councilwoman Katz said, fully support our law enforcement, 100% behind them all the way. Love to see this young man serving with our police force coming up on June 8th. Just like she said, to make sure we have all of our financial ducks in a row. We're all kind of moving forward into the unknown together with how these are going to impact the city. And I think waiting a couple of weeks would serve us best.
Thank you, Mr. Pelisi. Mr. Banks.
The question is more for Mr. Pavlak and Mr. Grimes. In 2 weeks' time, given that coronavirus is kind of a moving target and we don't know what's going to happen within those 2 weeks, are these numbers we can actually estimate?
I think that was discussed during the finance meeting. It's going to be uncertain, but we have to use the best resources we have available at this time to come up with a picture that we can reasonably project at this time, and then we'll have to revise it as the year goes on.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. I had a question for Chief Hagan. If by us tabling this tonight, does that affect this young officer, his potential for coming to be an officer for the city?
No, sir. Brett Garbrick is already a certified officer through MOPEC. So he can be approved 2 weeks from now for the same June 8th date he could be approved for tonight. It would affect or have more of an effect on the next person in line who is going to need to go to the academy should we choose to hire our full complement. The next person after Brett would need to be hired in a relatively timely manner so that we could get her scheduled to go to the academy with the one that we already have waiting to go to the academy. That will likely be sometime in June as well. So, if we choose to do that, that would be more of an issue, because if we don't get her in an academy, the next one available, we could be waiting until later in the year, possibly as late as January, to get her in another one. So the time issue is more for number 49. Brett Garbrick is number 48.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mackey.
Just another question for the chief. You said Officer Garbrick would be number 48. So with simple math tells me we're currently at 47. If we do not or wouldn't for some reason end up hiring Officer Garbrick, and we have a deployment and a retirement, does that then put us down to 45 officers?
Yes, it does, at least until the beginning of next year. Officer Schwab would go to the academy. If it opens back up in June, he would not be done till the end of the year. And Officer Heitzman deploying out of the country would not be back until at least sometime in the beginning of the year. So we would be literally down to 45 for the rest of the year. And right now we have one out injured, two out injured, one maybe for a substantial period of time here. So when you look at injuries, the number is even lower, and we can't calculate when those are going to occur.
Other comments? I think as council, we're doing our due diligence. We need to hear from our staff and hear from the public safety component about what they need. And then we have to be responsible on the financial side as well. So in the end, whatever decisions we make concerning staffing have to be well thought out and with about current information, as current as we can get. So we're going through that process. And Ms. Mealy.
Mr. Allison, you didn't need to cut yourself off so that I could talk. But the only point that I was going to make is that the council, we all received some numbers in our council packets from the finance department this week relating to police overtime. And the one other element of discussion in the finance committee meeting was the impact of hiring or not hiring on police overtime. Because of course, if we're paying huge amounts of money for overtime because we're short-staffed in the department, then we're effectively paying more for officers than we are just to make a hire. Mm-hmm. And so that was part of the discussion that we had with Chief Hagan and Joe Pavlak, was simply a kind of trying to look forward at the rest of the year in terms of potentially expected overtime and trying to understand our obligations there. Because that, I think, where we've always had an issue in the city is you can only cut staff so far before you get in, you get into sort of essential services that need to be done, and you're going to pay somebody time and a half to do them. So, so that's the one other issue for consideration here, I think, and part of the finance committee's, clearly discussion next 2 weeks from now as well. And should be part of what council is bearing in mind is, and what we all keep an eye on is our overtime numbers throughout the city and the extent to which our staffing in various departments impacts those. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Banks.
Yeah, just to continue on that point, overtime also has effect on op tempo. Like if you have a high op tempo, that could really affect our officers in their health and their alacrity on duty. So that's another thing to consider, when we go forward. We're considering this in 2 weeks is, if we don't have enough officers on staff, it may be a liability to the city. Not in terms of officers being able to do their jobs, but just being overworked.
Right. Yeah, I think it's an issue to consider, especially since our police overtime doubled this in the first quarter over last year. So I think we need to start looking at ways to bring that down before we're dramatically over budget this year. And if hires are part of the way to do that, then it may be in our financial best interest in the long run. But that's a discussion we have to have. And I personally need a little bit more insight into the inner workings there before I can call that one way or the other.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy, and thank you, everybody. Good comments tonight. And you as well, Chief Hagan. Thank you. I heard talk of tabling. Mr. Yoder?
Yeah, I was just going to do that. My feel here is that it seems like we generally can agree on tabling this. So I would make a motion to table for 2 weeks, and revisit at our next scheduled council meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a second? Thank you. There's been a motion and a second to table. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please, to table.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'll say yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mr. Allison.
Yes, thank you. Motion to table passes 6-1. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Before we move to accept for filing minutes, I want to make an announcement on our ad hoc building committee. After consultation with solicitors and some discussion, I'm going to make some changes tonight. What we're going to do is add one council person, so there'll be 3 on the ad hoc committee, and it will become a full council committee. So tonight, I'm announcing we're adding Mr. Pelisi as a member of that committee, and Ms. Mealy's on it as well, and Mr. Yoder, who has already been put on it as well, will chair the committee. I have a question for Mr. White. I'd like to add an alternate. Could I do that in this context? An alternate council person in case someone couldn't attend?
Certainly, you can add an alternate.
Okay. So I'd like to add Mr. Mackey as an alternate council person who could fill in as needed. I think all of council is going to be very interested in this. The meetings I'm going to announce this as well. The meetings are going to be set for once a month, the second Tuesday in each month, and they will start at 4 o'clock. And I think all of council is going to pretty much be attentive and a part of that, at least observing and gathering the information that's put out at that time. As far as the administrative component, we've contracted it a little bit. The feeling is we need to be lean and mean in this beginning part. So what we will, Mr. Winder will not be on the committee. Mr. Winder has his hands very full with RVT and overseeing streets and parks as well. So that makes sense. We will have Norm Lubin as a solicitor as part of the committee. And we'll have, we had named an engineer as a title because at that time we didn't have one. So now we do have one, and that's John Sander, and he will be an important component of this. The expertise and knowledge and experience he brings as a certified PE and his work background will be vital to disseminating and bringing forth the information and the context of that information for all of us. So we're excited about that. We're also going to have Mr. Pavlak, as announced before, and Mr. Girardi, and Mayor Slaughter is a member of this committee as well. So that's what we're going to go with for now. Of course, all of the administration side, every department and every elected official in City Hall is going to be part of this team in one way or another, because their opinions and knowledge are going to be drawn on at different times. And we've talked about that as well. So that will be that'll be a more fluid component. So we look forward to the first meeting, which will be May 12th, I believe. And that'll be at 4 p.m. and it will be public. So we'll be launching then. And I'm sure there's work already being done and research from some of those who are involved, work on their own. So our intention is to move this along. The charge remains the same. Investigate the options for a permanent home for city government, administratively, and for city council. Is it going to make more sense financially and in other ways to stay at City Hall and make the repairs and the added remodels that are needed to be ADA compliant and the whole gamut, and what the price tag for that's going to be? Or is there other city property that is going to be make more sense financially and every other way? Or is there some other option out there that needs to be investigated? And that's going to be the charge of this committee, to come back to council with a united recommendation for us to vote on. Ms. Mealy.
Mr. Allison, if I might, I think the point that became clear during some discussions the last couple of weeks is that we have somewhat exhaustively, if not with any agreement, explored the cost of staying in City Hall. We've done 3 different studies that have differed wildly in the numbers they came back with. However, we've never looked at the cost of any of the other options. And what that means is, it frankly is close to useless for us to look at the cost to stay if we don't also know the cost to go. And consequently, I think to put the finest point on it we can is the charge of the committee, is to look at all of the options, figure out what all of those options will cost us, and what they will cost the community in some ways, I'm sure too. There are multiple items to be considered here, but to look at all of our options and come back as quickly as possible with a recommendation on staying or going that has the involvement and the approval, not just of the council side of the equation, but also of the administrative side of the equation. And where all of us can finally agree and say, look, we think we did our due diligence. This is the best answer we got right now. We've fallen down on that charge a handful of times now, and it's important that we get this settled once and for all.
And I think we're a lot better positioned to do that now in this current term with the new administration and council members.
Exactly.
Any other comments from council tonight? Okay, then we'll move on to item 7, except for filing. Public Works meeting minutes of February 4th, 2020. Finance Committee meetings of January 7th, January 21st, and February 4th of 2020. Public Safety meeting minutes of February 4th, 2020. And finance statement for the first quarter of 2020. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments or questions from council? Hearing none, the vote please, Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. I'll move on to announcements. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held on Thursday, May 14th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Remotely. Upcoming meetings, Monday, May 4th at noon, Planning Commission. Friday, May 8th at 11 a.m. ERC. Tuesday, May 12th at 11:30 a.m. Public Safety. And last but not least, 1 p.m. the finance meeting on that Tuesday, and 2:30 p.m. Public Works, and at 4 o'clock will be the ad hoc committee. Wednesday, May 13th, 3:30 p.m. O&E pension, and then we have our next council meeting. Are there any comments from council tonight? Mrs. Katz, you had your hand up first.
Yes. John Markley, who is chair of the Veterans Park Commission, called me, and he wanted to let everybody know that the service at the Veterans Park for Memorial Weekend is canceled until 2021, of course, due to everything that's going on right now. He also wants everybody to know that they are still selling the bricks. And Chris, is this on our website? Because he said to go on the website for more info for selling the bricks.
The bricks are not on the website, no.
John would really appreciate it, especially now that there's so little contact with people.
Yeah, we can do that.
Fantastic. The second thing that I have is I talked to Adam Winder before council about Graffius Run. Keep our fingers crossed. Nothing's gone over the banks so far, and really very little debris is coming down from Loyal Sock. So hopefully the rain stops and it keeps on this way. We have no problems with Graffius.
I've monitored that today somewhat, Councilwoman Katz, and fortunately the rain it's been steady, but it hasn't been the big downpour that causes the problem. So yeah, we are fortunate today. Mr. Yoder had his hand up next.
Councilman, I'll yield the floor to Councilman Pelisi. He actually beat me to the punch.
Okay, all right. Mr. Pelisi.
I appreciate that, Councilman Yoder. I wanted, actually, it's a question, but more so directed for local businesses within our area. Obviously, as we know, a lot of small family-owned businesses, local businesses are being affected by the current pandemic that's going on. Where could they find information regarding some of the grant programs that are being offered, the assistance programs? I think Chamber of Commerce offers one. I believe the United Way also offers one. I was hoping that we might be able to give them a little bit of direction. I did, Mayor Slaughter, I'd asked him about it, and he gave me some good direction on how to help or direct some other local business owners. I appreciate that very much. But for everybody else that may be watching that has a small business that's not quite sure where to turn in these times, or where to seek some financial help, do we have any kind of information up on the website, or where could somebody go to find that out?
Do you want me to respond to that? Or, I mean, I can, so you can, First Community Foundation, like Cumming County United Way, you can go to the First Community Foundation's website. They have information up on theirs. I'm not sure if the chamber has made theirs public yet or not, but you can contact the chamber regarding their program that will be upcoming. I'm not sure if that's, like I said, I don't know if that's started yet or not. And on the city front, we are working as well to see where the city is going to be able to assist. As Councilman Pelisi said, we do have some dollars available We have CDBG and enterprise zone funding. And so we are working now to see exactly where and how the city can assist the business community and the community at large as well. But for the immediate future, you can go to, and once we have that available, that will obviously be up on our website, and we'll put releases out for that. But right now, you can go to First Community Foundations to get information on their programs. We can put that on the city site as well. I don't think that would be any type of issue. I would double check that with them and contact the chamber for theirs, and we'll put that up as well once that's ready to go.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the help and the effort, and I'm sure a lot of people out there also appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Politi. Mr. Yoder.
Yeah, I had a question for Mayor Slaughter. Just wanted to see how everything was going with CityBot. I know that I at least signed up for it, and a couple of my neighbors did, and I haven't seen many, if any, messages. So we're just kind of curious, how's it going? How's it being used? What kind of statistics are you seeing for signing up? Do you see it being advantageous? I mean, we're about a month in and a 2-month temporary deal. So
yes, it's going well. We sent out a message to everyone, letting them know, thanks for signing up, and to utilize the service. And we have received, hang on, let me see if I can pull it up here, statistics. But we've had a decent number of people just message us directly that we could answer questions, some about leaf pickup, some about recycling, which is the county, of course, and various other. But I can definitely pull together for you and send out the exact. We have around, I want to say, between 600 and 700 people that have signed up for it thus far. So a decent amount. And the messages, as was discussed before, it's easy to respond to. So if they say, is county recycling open today? I remember saying at that point, it was, I believe, a Thursday, and the transfer station was opening that Friday, I believe, or whatever the case might be, it was the next day. So I was able to quickly respond and say the transfer station will be open. So it's been very user-friendly on our end. And as we start to slowly reopen here, we'll be able to push out messages and updates along those lines. But I can give you the exact statistics here tomorrow or even tonight as soon as I pull them up.
yeah, no, I'd be interested to see them. I'm intrigued to see how this plays out for the city, and it's definitely an asset. So
yeah, it's very
curious.
Yeah, it's been very useful. You can respond via text message or email or call directly, and so we've been able to handle a number of just questions very quickly by them just messaging us, and we just responded. So it's been useful. But I'll definitely get you those exact statistics.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter.
Okay, thank you. Comments from administration tonight? Seeing, hearing none. Comment from the public tonight. Do we have any, Mr. White?
We have one comment from Karen Koch from the Center for Independent Living of North Central Pennsylvania. The reline was CART, assuming that's referring to the computer.
Austin, you're muted.
I'm assuming that the CART references to the computer-aided real-time translation service.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
her message is, the service worked well, thank you. And then there are no other comments received during the comment period.
Great. Thank you, Mr. White. So we're getting the hang of it. I think it's working a lot smoother each meeting. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, and we are going to have an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.